Welcome to Weekly Pulse. I'm Mackenzie Salmon. NASCAR is back, so we're talking to driver Matt DiBennedetto about what it feels like to get behind the wheel again and how his sport can pave the way for other leagues to return to action. In the docu-series, The Last Dance has come to an end. We talked to former Bulls player BJ Armstrong about the so-called flu game and Michael Jordan's legacy. Then we switch gears to talk baseball. Former executive director of the NBPA Charles Grantham talks about the many hurdles the MLB and its players will face from a financial standpoint as the league attempts to start their season. Let's roll. So with NASCAR providing a lot for sports fans right now and getting a lot of the spotlight, I want you to kind of briefly talk about what a casual NASCAR fan should be looking out for if they're tuning in right now. If they might not know a whole lot about the sport, or if they just casually follow along, what are some things they should be looking out for?
Yeah, this is it's a tough time, but it's really neat for the fact that we've got a lot more eyeballs on the sport, more people getting interested in NASCAR, which is neat. A lot of casual fans watching, and honestly, the announcers, everyone in the broadcast booth do such a good job of breaking down the races and explaining every bit of it. So I don't think anyone, even a casual fan or someone who's never really watched NASCAR, is unfamiliar. I don't think anyone would be lost watching the sport. It's not quite, it's they break it down and simplify it all, and it's neat to get some new viewers and people interested in it because, we all are so passionate about what we do.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. Do you feel like this is a good opportunity for NASCAR to grow its fan base? And what are some things you think it needs to do to run with the spotlight that it's got right now?
Yeah, all we can do is just focus on the positives of the situation and what we can control. It's been neat to see how appreciative everyone was to just be going back to doing what we love at the racetrack. And this is an opportunity for us to get a lot of new viewers since, people have been, let's be honest, everyone's been missing live sports desperately. So for us to get that back on TV and put on a show for the fans was amazing. And for people that may otherwise be watching some other type of sport, this is an opportunity for them to get involved in NASCAR. And a lot of people, enjoy doing stuff like DraftKings and the betting and things that can get them interested that way. So a lot of new people that are coming to watch NASCAR, and a lot of people that watch it end up loving and enjoying it, and finding somebody that they can pull for, and so it's a cool opportunity for us to maybe grab some new people to get some interest.
And I want to know your thoughts on your first race back after a 2-month hiatus. Was it hard to get back into the swing of things?
It actually wasn't. I'll be honest. I was just so excited. I was excited for even the basic stuff, like driving to the racetrack and knowing, like, all right, I'm gonna, we're getting our lives back a little bit. We get to go back racing, doing what we love. That's what I live for.
Major League Baseball, the NBA, NHL, they're all debating on how they're trying to make a comeback. NASCAR is leading the charge right now. So from your perspective, what should these sports take from NASCAR's return?
Yeah, I think all the folks at NASCAR have been working. I don't envy them one bit. They've been working 24/7 and have to be so tired. But because they know that we are, leading the charge back to bringing sports back to, live sports back TV and everything. So they were so adamant about doing it perfect, absolutely perfect. Honestly, it couldn't have gone any better. They followed everything to a T. Every person in the industry, that was a good example. I think all industries would do the same because everyone misses it so bad that you didn't have anyone bucking the system or trying to fight it. Everyone was just like desperate. Yes, we'll do whatever, we'll follow whatever protocol you put in place, and it went picture perfect, smooth. And so it was neat to see how hard everybody worked and how everyone was on the same page.
But did you personally feel okay about the procedure with the crew staff leaving the track? And did you feel safe?
Yeah, I felt safer than ever, honestly. I felt super safe. So no, they did such a good job following every guideline. That's probably the safest I've ever felt. Everybody did a fantastic job.
So BJ, we finally saw the last 2 episodes. I know we briefly talked about our initial thoughts on it, but I kind of want to jump into starting with the Pizzagate. I had no idea that the flu game was actually the food poisoning game. Was it common knowledge in this NBA circles back then that that's what actually had happened?
Well, you knew something happened, and we all had to go and play in Utah. So you didn't want to accuse anything you didn't have proof over. But I had heard these stories, and of course, there was a lot of speculation, and definitely something was going on. I think now we verify what really happened. It was the pizza. It was the whole pizza deal, and now the legend grows that he had food poisoning, perhaps. But we had definitely heard a lot of things in the NBA circle to watch what you eat there, especially in Utah.
And with Kerr being the common denominator, do you see any similarities between the Bulls and the Warriors dynasties? Like what makes them similar and different? Obviously with MJ being the biggest difference, I guess.
Well, everyone likes to compare generation to generation. But when you pull the curtain back, when you really, look at it for what it is, the game really never changes, right? Since 1946, the game has been and will always remain the same when it comes to the level of excellence in which we're talking about. There's only three things happening out there on the court at any given time, right? It looks different, right? You watch the Warriors and you go, oh, wow, look at Steph Curry shooting, look at Klay Thompson shooting, look at all the things, because they're fun to watch. But no one really talks about the core of who that team really is, right? They were the best defensive team in the league. They make sure that they would always defend the ball after they would play that great defensive possession. And then Steve Kerr, like all great coaches, they always encourage the players to share the ball with one another. You got to pass the ball to each other. So at the core of any championship team, those three things will always remain. Now, it will look different. The style will look different. The rules of the game will change. But Michael Jordan and the Bulls, they were a great defensive team. They were a great team that rebounded the ball, whether it was Dennis Rodman or Horace Grant or whomever, and they would share the ball with one another. And that's what we did. Now, we had the triangle offense. The Warriors had their style of playing. Last year, the Toronto Raptors had their style. But at the core of that, Kawhi Leonard was a great defensive player. Yeah. And that's what makes a great team. So the game will never change in that regard, but it certainly will look different because of the rules and the styles and as the athletes evolve. I mean, they're just bigger and stronger and faster than the previous generation.
In the end of the doc, with it focusing on the possibility of a seventh ring, in 1999, there was no, I guess, clear winner, even though the Spurs were such a good team. If the band was able to get back together in 99, do you think there was any doubt that they could have won that seventh ring?
Well, that makes for a good conversation. As a former athlete, if I can go back to that mindset, if you will allow me to go back to that mindset, I would say, Mackenzie. Look, when you play that length of time and you start going that deep into the playoffs, there's a limitation that you have to your body, right? Your body can only do so much, and there's only a certain amount of jumps that every athlete has. There's only so many bumps and so many hits that a person can take. As an athlete, the answer that Michael gave, look, there's no stop in that man, right? There's no, saying, oh, I don't think we could have won it. So he answered the question correctly. As a former player, I think the only person that could have answered that question, Mackenzie, in all honesty, would be Phil Jackson, because Phil Jackson would have been the only person that would have to have managed those athletes as they mature, right? So the same player. So Michael Jordan was a totally different player in the first three-peat than he was in the second three-peat, and that's because of age, right? Michael Jordan in the first three-peat, there wasn't a fadeaway that man, he wasn't fading away from anything. He was just energy. He had this incredible stamina. He was just physically, he was just coming. The genius part of what he was able to do as he matured as a player is he reinvented himself in the second three-peat. Now, I don't know any way to get around the question, which is, how do you manage those players as they mature, as they begin to get a little older, because you still have to practice. Even though you may have the knowledge and the understanding of how to win, nothing replaces hard work. You can't ever forget the difficulty that it takes to go out there and play through 82 games and go through the ups and downs of the postseason and doing all those things. Now, your mind, I can only say what all of us learn at some point in our career. Your mind says yes, but sometime at the eight, your body says, what's going on here? Now, could they have probably? Hey, certainly no one beat them, so they definitely earned the right to do that. But I think truthfully, the only person that could answer that question and answer it intellectually with the understanding of what the team needed at that particular time would be Phil Jackson. And I would be interested to see what he says, because he would have had to practice these guys. He would have had to manage their minutes. He would have had to do all of those things to get them to that point, because there's no denying that, you know what, you got 82 games and you got to win 16 games in the playoffs. And that's easier said than done.
And with Phil Jackson being that domino that led to the whole team dispersing after 98, was he the glue that was holding it all together? I know you mentioned he'd be the one to have to answer that question.
Well, again, when you play in that league, you understand that you have to find a group of individuals, a group of players who really are willing to take the responsibility for the group. And Michael certainly was the catalyst to that. He understood that group dynamic. And many times when you play, especially when you're younger, it's like the coach and then it's their players. But if you're going to talk about being a champion, then the players actually have to hold themselves accountable. Yeah. And that is the difference between a championship caliber team and a team who's just good, or a team who are still trying to develop and figure out who they were. Look, Phil was great. Phil was a terrific organizer, but the truth of it is that the players have to take responsibility for the team. You have to police yourself. You have to hold each other accountable, and you have to become each other's truth teller. And when that happens, then you have a chance. There's 82 games. I'm not going to listen to 82 pick-me-up speeches. I'm not going to do that as an NBA player. I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to your coach, but what I am saying is that if something wasn't going right, I knew I was going to hear from Michael Jordan. I knew I was going to hear from Scottie Pippen. Hey, man, get yourself going tonight. Now, I don't know what you were doing, but we need you to perform. Performance is the X factor in this league. And it was vice versa. If those guys weren't going, they were going to hear from me. I was going to hear from Bill Cartwright. I didn't need Phil Jackson to tell me I went 0 for 7 and that I wasn't playing well. I didn't need that. Like, I knew I was playing bad. Yeah. And Michael and all the guys knew I was playing bad, and they were going to hold me accountable. Yeah. So that's what you needed. So every player, has to figure that out. And once I figured that out as a teammate on a championship caliber team, it brings about a certain bond. And that's why we can all laugh at each other, because we were each other's truth teller. We didn't need anyone else to tell it. Like, if he wasn't playing well, I would tell him, like, come on, man, you got to get yourself going. Like, that's what we did. And that's the beauty on being on a championship caliber team.
And we had a question come in from a fan, and I think it's really, I think it's a good question I wanted to ask you. Robert asked, who is to blame for not getting the chance to win a 7th title? And I think looking back, starting off, the doc had Krause be this like really annoying like character in it. And it's like, oh, he's a reason behind the team breaking up, whatnot. But the more I guess for me personally watching the doc, I realized, a lot of moving parts went into it. Can you truly pinpoint any blame, or was it just a collective?
Well, being an ex-player and working in as an executive and now doing what I'm doing, the one thing that the truth of a championship caliber team is the following. And anything that you start it's going to end. And that's what you always know as an athlete. Once you win a championship, it's kind of it's like a known thing in NBA circles. And I think all sports, honestly, as I think about it, when you win, and you start winning and you build, consecutive years, when it does end, it's always going to end bad, right? That's what you always know, because you never want this to end, right? You work your whole life to win one. Suddenly you win two, you win three. In this case, they won six. So, but when it does end, it's always going to end bad. And if you look at every dynasty, and let's just take the current, let's just look at the Patriots right now, the New England Patriots. You didn't know how it's going to win, how it's going to end. Yeah. But when it did end, you're like, God, like why couldn't they figure that out?
Yeah.
That's just what sports is. Now, I've never seen one that ended on a happy note. That's just what, and you understand that as an athlete. Who is to blame? It's human nature. It's just human nature. That's what it's gone. It just is what it is. So I think when you play, you win, but you also know in the back of your mind, when it does end, it's going to end bad. And you know what? It ended. I don't know who's to blame for it, but in the end, you got six.
Hi, this is Bob Nightingale from USA Today Sports, and this is what I'm hearing. Well, Major League Baseball submitted a 67-page health and safety protocol to the Players Association on all the players over the weekend. It was daunting, to say the least. No more showers in the clubhouse, no more going out to eat on the road, no more drinks in the bars, no spitting, no high-fiving. They don't even want you to throw the ball around the infield. So there'll be modifications and revisions to it. What Major League Baseball hopes is to have a better plan by the end of the week. Meanwhile, it's an economic issue. That is what's going to decide whether baseball will be played or not. It would be suicidal for baseball not to have a season this year. It would remind people, if not worse, of the 94-95 strike when the 1994 World Series was canceled. Right now, Major League Baseball says they will lose more money by playing games without fans in the stands than not having a season at all. They said they would lose about $4 billion if they played 82 games with no fans in the stands. The union cannot believe this is true. They want proof. This is Bob Nightingale from USA Today Sports, and this is what I'm hearing.
With the financial side and the health and safety side both coming into play, from your perspective as someone who's represented players' interests, are these protocols enough for you to encourage players to come back?
Well, I think it's the protocols up to this point. As I said, if you're going to start with the standards and say that the CDC standards must be met before we can even consider coming back, that's a start. But the players are going to have to feel comfortable. And I think you've seen several that have come out and said they were not so comfortable with going back and that they would not wish to start. Because at the same time that they began talking about the standards by which you'd return, the same owners start talking about the dividing of the revenue that's going to be earned. The owners are still trying to convert or to get and maintain more control of salaries. That's always the issue. And revenue share, if you want to say 50-50 split, which is again a sort of a suggestion that we got the salary cap right behind this. It's just inconsistent with what players perceive in baseball that they want. Personally, I was one of the architects of putting the first salary cap together back in 1983, but we had exceptions to the salary cap. So again, if you're sitting back saying we're going to reconstruct our financial structure and we would say, well, we can create this salary cap with exceptions is one thing. Without exceptions is something else, and that's totally less desirable. Salary caps and tax systems are different now because they all try to do the same thing, and that is restrain salaries. And You know, if you owned the team and I came to you and said, here's a good investment for you, you'd say, well, what are my labor costs? And then I'd be able to tell you, well, your labor costs are somewhat controlled because there's a salary cap or there's a tax threshold that you can't go beyond without being punished or penalized. And that is a totally different discussion from the terms and conditions of safety. And I don't know that you can talk to them both at the same time. You're going to have to deal first with getting players to feel good about going back to work. You know, it's very interesting in my class just before the semester ended. We were talking about the confidence and the comfort level of all of us and how we feel at this time about professional sports. And all of them would like to come back, would certainly like to see sports again. And the ownership will clearly both are looking at getting TV revenue, and they realize the demand for TV and sports and entertainment is very high at this point. So this is the ideal time to get back and put a game out there, on the one hand. On the other hand, when I asked the students, well, how many of you, if I was able to provide courtside seats, would you get on the train to go into New York to sit at Madison Square Garden? And the answer to everyone was no, we would not do that. So confidence is a key issue for not just consumers, but confidence of the participants and the players in particular. I've seen several players come out and say they have pre-existing conditions, or they're concerned about their family members who do have pre-existing conditions. So these sort of rules of engagement are really going to take some time. And it's one thing to talk about them. It's another to see how, in fact, they're going to be enforced. What about liability and insurance? Things of those nature, I think, again, between players and owners, these are discussions that are forthcoming.
And a Major League Baseball Players Association exec recently said, he was quoted saying, a system that restricts player pay based on revenues is a salary cap, period. And I want to know, if players don't agree to it, how long can this back and forth go before there's a drop dead date and the season's completely canceled?
Well, I think timing, you know, we always say in negotiation, time is your friend or enemy. And of course, we're going to find out pretty quickly which side is going to have the friendship. However, the pandemic is sort of the outside factor here. Without the guidelines, no one will play. How late can you start the baseball season? Can you start as late as July or August to get 82 games in? Perhaps the schedule may be reduced from 82 games. I think the time will tell. But at a certain point, you're right. You're going to either have to decide that we are going to go with a season of 82 games, and this is how we feel the length of time that we need to play them, and therefore we need to make a decision in 30 days. But don't forget, they're making the decision at the same time that the various states are either opening or reopening.
That's a good point.
And they're also trying to decide, are we going to play baseball in all of our cities, or are we going to designate key cities? They've already stated that they will change have a divisional schedule, which changes the number of teams in each division to minimize some of the travel. I think a lot of this is far more complicated than most of us realize. That it's not something that's going to be done overnight, and it's not something that's going to be implemented very easily.
That's it from us at Weekly Pulse, your heartbeat to what's trending in sports.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.